So, what does a fully baked steamed bun have in common with reaching like ultimate spiritual enlightenment?
Well, that is definitely not exactly the usual jumping off point for a philosophical discussion, is
Ah,
it?
no, far from it. But I
Right.
mean, that is exactly the incredibly specific, slightly jarring connection we are pulling apart today.
Right.
We're looking at a translated essay from December 2020 by an author named Feng, and the piece is titled, "You Can Only Fulfill Your Mission in Life by Helping Others."
Yeah, the title kind of gives away the core thesis right up front.
Exactly. And the goal for this deep dive is to explore this really bold framework. Because
Yeah.
the main argument here is that your own personal self actualization, like your ultimate success as a conscious being, is mathematically and spiritually impossible unless you are entirely devoted to serving other people.
Which is a huge claim.
Mm.
And what immediately stands out when you read this text is the absolute whiplash in tone.
Oh, for sure.
Because, as impartial guides walking you through this worldview today, we really have to point out how wild the framing gets. I mean, on one page, the author is wrestling with the nature of existence,
Right.
right? Referencing Jesus, the Buddha, immortals, and the cosmos.
Yeah.
And then, literally, without missing a beat, the text aggressively pivots to the etiquette of social media group chats.
We are literally talking about the spiritual consequences of being a lurker on WeChat.
Precisely. It violently collides the divine with the deeply mundane.
Hmm.
And we're going to hold this worldview up to the light, examine its internal logic, and see what kind of insights you might be able to extract for how you navigate your own life.
Right, but before we can even get to how the author says we are supposed to achieve our life's mission, we have to understand his baseline definition of accomplishment.
And that brings us right back to the steamed bun.
It does, which is actually a surprisingly effective metaphor when you break it down.
It really is, yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this. The text opens with these very grounded, almost agricultural analogies. The author says that when flour is made into steamed buns, its mission has been accomplished.
Hmm.
When the fruit on a tree is completely ripe, its mission has been accomplished. So for an object, accomplishment is just reaching its natural, irreversible endpoint.
Right, because flour is just pulverized wheat, but once it's a steamed bun, it can never go back. It is fully transformed.
Exactly. But then he shifts to humans. For a human being, the text argues that accomplishment is saying farewell to the world with absolutely no regrets, or sublimating into an immortal or a Buddha.
Let's actually pause on that phrase for a second, sublimating into an immortal, because in the context of this specific philosophy, it's not necessarily about, growing wings and flying into the clouds.
Right, it's more grounded than that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's describing an energetic state. Like sublimation in science is when a solid turns directly into a gas, bypassing the liquid phase entirely.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so in this framework, the author is talking about a complete transcendence of the human ego trap. It's like a psychological weightlessness.
And the criteria he lays out for whether or not you've achieved that weightlessness is incredibly strict. I mean, it's basically a litmus test for a fulfilled life that throws out every single metric we are taught to care about.
Yeah, you can forget your resume, your bank account.
Your legacy, how many followers you have, all of it. The text explicitly says that when you are on your deathbed, if you still harbor concerns, remorse, resentment, regret, nostalgia, or fear, it proves your mission in life was a failure.
That list is what makes this so radical. I mean, it demands a total psychological and spiritual resolution. It's a completely clean break.
But let's look at the emotions on that list because some of them make sense, but others are really counterintuitive, like remorse, resentment, fear. We all intuitively agree those are heavy negative things to hold on to. Nobody wants to die afraid, but he includes concerns and nostalgia. I mean, if I'm on my deathbed and I'm deeply concerned about whether my children will be okay after I'm gone, society would call that being a loving parent.
Right.
But this text calls it a failure of my life's mission. Why?
Well, because it implies an attachment to an outcome you no longer control, which means your ego is still clinging to the physical world.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But the inclusion of nostalgia is even more fascinating, because our culture heavily romanticizes nostalgia, right? We love looking back at the golden days.
Oh, definitely. We're obsessed with it.
But think about the mechanism of nostalgia. It means you are mentally anchored to a past state of being. You're longing for something that no longer exists, which means you are profoundly discontent with your present, final reality.
So, going back to the metaphor, nostalgia means you are flour that is wishing it was still wheat, instead of just accepting that you are a steamed bun now.
Exactly. If you have lingering attachments to the past or anxieties about the future, you aren't fully baked. You haven't completed your transformation.
Flour isn't nostalgic for being wheat. I love that.
The great image.
So if we accept the incredibly high bar for a fulfilled life, this zero regret, zero nostalgia, zero fear station, the obvious question is, how do you actually achieve that?
Right. What's the mechanism?
Exactly. And this leads into what I can only describe as the mathematics of giving.
The mathematics of giving, that's a great label for it because the text introduces a literal concept of scale here.
Here's where it gets really interesting. It connects your personal spiritual achievement directly to the sheer volume of people that you serve.
Right.
To prove this, the author points right to the top of the historical spiritual hierarchy, Jesus and Sakyamuni, the Buddha. He claims that the only reason they achieved divine status is simply because of the, quote, great number of individuals that they served. Now, I have to push back on this because framing it that way makes it sound like a spiritual sales quota. Yeah. Like a multi-level marketing scheme for enlightenment or something. Like, if I serve 10 people, I get a little bit of enlightenment. If I serve 1 billion people, I unlock the Buddha tier.
Right. I see what you mean.
It sounds incredibly transactional, which completely contradicts the idea of leaving your ego behind.
It absolutely sounds like a paradox at first glance. Because if you are serving 1 billion people just so you can become a Buddha, well, you're driven by ultimate selfishness, not selflessness.
Exactly.
But the text provides a crucial modifier that explains the mechanism at work here. It introduces the concept of formless almsgiving.
Formless almsgiving.
Yes.
Yeah.
The author argues that of all the types of service you can provide, formless almsgiving has the widest and most extensive reach.
Okay, so what does that actually look like?
Formless almsgiving essentially means giving without a specific target, without attachment to the outcome, and without it necessarily even taking a tangible physical form. You aren't handing a physical piece of bread to one specific person in front of you and waiting for a thank you. You're putting energy, truth, or profound help out into the universe broadly.
But isn't that just a loophole? Like, I'm not keeping track of the numbers on a spreadsheet, but I know the universe is secretly keeping score, so I'm still just farming good karma for myself.
Well, that's where the idea of true ego dissolution comes in. The text posits that formless almsgiving only works when the self is completely removed from the equation. It's not that you're ignoring the score, it's that the part of you that cares about the score no longer exists.
You have to actually not care.
Right. And to illustrate how seriously the author takes this complete destruction of the ego, he points the lens directly at himself.
Oh, yes.
Xuefeng writes about his own ultimate fulfillment in relation to his followers. And just to give some context, the text refers to his followers as the Chanyuan Celestials, which is part of a broader community and philosophical worldview called Lifechanyuan that the author founded.
Right, and when discussing his own spiritual legacy, the author delivers this incredibly blunt, highly memorable quote about his reliance on this community.
It is so blunt.
It is wild. I have to read it exactly as translated because it completely shatters the academic tone.
Go for it.
He writes, quote, "Whether I, Shuifen, can achieve my mission in life or not, in the end, depends entirely on what Chanyuan Celestials can achieve." Wait, no, let me just read the whole thing without stopping. If Chanyuan Celestials cannot achieve anything, then Shuifeng is just a bunch of stinky shit, nothing more.
It really is a jarring phrase to stumble across in a philosophical essay.
I mean, we're talking about Jesus, Buddha, formless almsgiving, the nature of the cosmos, and suddenly, boom, stinky shit.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, look at the underlying psychology of what he's actually saying about leadership.
Yeah.
It is a staggering surrender. He is completely removing himself from the center of his own life's mission.
Let's create an analogy to explain the mechanics of what he means here. Think about it like being a mirror.
Okay.
If you are a beautifully crafted mirror, but you're locked inside a dark closet, obsessed with your own surface, you are completely useless. You have no value. But if you angle yourself to reflect the sun onto others, illuminating their path, warming them up, you inherently become brilliant and full of light. But that brilliance is 100% dependent on what you are passing on. If you aren't reflecting light onto someone else, you're just a piece of glass in the dark.
That perfectly captures the mechanism the text is describing.
Right.
A teacher, a leader, or a spiritual guide is nothing more than that empty mirror. Their legacy is entirely contingent on the success of the people they serve.
Wow.
If the people this author is trying to help don't achieve their own fulfillment, then his entire existence, his own profound wisdom, is totally worthless. It's the ultimate inversion of the ego. You cannot be successful in a vacuum.
You are only as successful as the flour you help turn into steamed buns.
Exactly.
So we have this grand sweeping philosophy: surrender your ego, serve the masses, practice formless almsgiving like historical spiritual founders, and become the mirror.
Hmm.
And it's very easy to nod along to these big historical concepts. We all agree Jesus and Buddha did great things, but applying this to ancient history is easy.
Sure is.
The real question is, how does this philosophy survive the pettiness of modern daily life? What happens when we apply this zero ego rule to our cell phones?
And this is where the essay pivots to what we can call the WeChat litmus test. The author takes this lofty spiritual mathematics and drops it squarely into the digital age.
He actually calls out a specific user in his WeChat group to serve as a case study. Her screen name translates to something like Great Freedom Transformation of Lotus, which is quite the handle.
It's very poetic for a social media app.
It is. And according to the text, Lotus was highly active. She disseminated a large amount of content related to the Lifechanyuan philosophy across various WeChat groups, and she wrote her own articles explaining their values to help others understand it.
Right.
Because she put all this effort into serving the community, the text notes she was genuinely praised by over 100 Chanyuan celestials in a very short period.
Which, if you think about it, is a pretty rare human experience. Most people go their entire lives without receiving genuine, unified praise from 100 different people at once.
True. But the author uses Lotus to pose a rhetorical challenge. He asks, if you don't help others, who will help you? If she hadn't actively put that effort into the world to fulfill others, she never would have received that validation or achieved that connection.
This raises an important question, though, about how we interact with digital communities.
Yeah.
Because the author is using her to draw a very sharp line in the sand between the active giver and the passive consumer in digital spaces.
Yeah.
He deliberately contrasts Lotus with the vast majority of people he encounters online.
Oh, he has absolute palpable disdain for passive consumers. He talks about how most netizens add him on WeChat just to promote themselves, or, to use his exact phrasing, to absorb the nourishment of others.
Right. Absorb the nourishment.
They want to take. They want to read the profound insights, feel a little rush of enlightenment, maybe feel better about their day, but they refuse to give a single thing back to the ecosystem.
They're digital lurkers. And the text points out that they aren't just failing to write articles like Lotus did. The author says they are so stingy and selfish that they won't even do the microscopic work of clicking like or forwarding an article they agree with.
Okay, wait, I have to challenge this.
Go for it.
Isn't that incredibly extreme? I mean, we are taking a philosophy rooted in the Buddha, shedding all earthly desires, and Jesus sacrificing himself for humanity, and we're comparing that to someone forgetting to double tap a screen on a group chat.
It does sound like a stretch.
How does the author justify bridging that massive gap? I mean, sometimes people are just tired after a long day at work. Is it really a profound moral failure to just scroll?
It's a great pushback.
Yeah.
But the author bridges that gap by looking at the friction between thought and action.
Okay.
If you read a truth that you believe is profound and helpful, but you actively choose to hoard it, even when the barrier to sharing it is literally just moving your thumb, what does that say about your ego?
Oh, I see. You're saying that the smaller the effort required, the more damning it is if you refuse to do it.
Exactly. If you won't even expend the energy of a mouse click to help someone else access wisdom, you are entirely trapped in your own ego.
Wow.
The text has a severe warning for people who operate this way. It claims that people who understand truth but act selfishly with it will be completely submerged in the long river of history, and everything they did will be a dream bubble. It will all be pointless.
Submerged in the long river of history. That is a chilling image.
The mechanism here is that unacted truth is just a fleeting cloud. It doesn't matter how enlightened you feel in your own head while you're scrolling on the couch.
Right.
If you don't materialize that truth into physical action, even an action as small as a digital endorsement to help spread it, it evaporates.
Because nobody trusts someone whose actions don't match their internal beliefs. If you actually believed it was life-saving wisdom, you'd share it. If you don't, you're just absorbing nourishment for your own entertainment.
Precisely. You are failing the core mission of your existence, which, as we established with the steamed bun, requires you to transform through action.
All right, so what does this all mean? We've scaled from ancient spiritual founders down to the granular, everyday level of clicking like on an app. It's a very cohesive, demanding philosophy.
It is.
But right now, it is still largely theoretical. I mean, it's very easy to preach selflessness when you're typing on your phone in a comfortable room. The real test of any belief system is adversity. Does this framework of total selflessness actually hold up when the world turns against you?
It's the ultimate stress test.
Exactly. And the author brings us to the final piece of evidence in the essay to answer exactly that. He makes a bold, sweeping claim about his own community.
Mhm.
He states that in today's world, the Chanyuan celestials are the people who understand truth the most. But his reasoning isn't that they meditate the longest or that they've read the most scriptures. The text claims they understand truth the most because they have suffered devastating blows for over 10 years.
A 10-year crucible. Now, we are exploring this impartially, so we are looking at the author's interpretation of these events rather than trying to verify a historical timeline.
Right, of course.
But what is vital to analyze here is the psychological mechanism he claims this group uses to process that trauma. According to the text, despite a decade of intense, devastating hardship, this group hasn't become cynical. They haven't become bitter or resentful.
And remember the failure criteria from the very beginning of the deep dive. Resentment is one of the emotions that immediately disqualifies you from a fulfilled life. No resentment allowed.
Exactly. Instead of resentment, the author observes that this community remains optimistic, confident, and romantic. They are continually building new homes, playing, laughing, and moving forward happily despite the external destruction around them.
Okay, but how? How is that psychologically possible? You can't just mandate joy.
Right.
How do you maintain a romantic, playful outlook on life after 10 years of devastating blows?
Well, the author provides the why, and it's the culmination of every concept we've unpacked today. He argues that they can maintain this joy because they never care about personal gains or personal losses.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Because their entire philosophical framework is built on having zero personal stakes in the outcome, outside destruction simply cannot penetrate their inner peace.
Because they aren't trying to absorb nourishment for themselves. They aren't hoarding anything.
Right. Think about the psychological armor that absolute selflessness provides. If you own a massive mansion that you are fiercely attached to and it burns down, you are devastated. Your ego is shattered.
Of course.
But if your only goal in life is to serve other people, if you truly view yourself as just the empty mirror, then it doesn't matter if you're standing in a mansion or standing in the ashes of one. You can still reflect light. You can still serve.
You can't destroy the spirit of someone who has absolutely nothing they're trying to protect for themselves.
Exactly. Their fulfillment is generated entirely internally through the external act of giving. They've essentially hacked the system of human suffering. By wanting nothing for themselves, the text concludes that their lives are inherently permanently fulfilled.
They've achieved the steamed bun state.
They have. The outside world can batter the bun, you can drop it on the floor, but it's still irreversibly fully baked.
It is a remarkable synthesis of a very intense worldview. Let's pull all these threads together. We started with flour transforming into steamed buns. This foundational idea that for humans, accomplishment means reaching a final state completely devoid of regret, nostalgia, and fear.
And according to the source material, the only mathematical pathway to that fearless state is absolute selflessness. Whether you are operating on the grand historical scale of figures practicing formless almsgiving,
Right.
or you're simply making the choice to not be a selfish lurker on WeChat like Lotus.
The underlying logic never changes. The more selfless you are, the more you accomplish. You become the mirror. While on the flip side, selfishness guarantees that your legacy is just a dream bubble submerged in the river of history. But for those willing to truly go all out and serve others, the author promises a bright way ahead.
It's a framework that forces you to look really closely at the friction between what you believe and what you actually do.
It absolutely does. Which brings me directly to you listening to this right now. We've spent this time exploring a worldview that argues your own actualization is literally impossible in a vacuum.
Yeah.
So I want to leave you with a thought to mull over as you step back into your day. If this text is right, if your ultimate life fulfillment is entirely dependent on the people you uplift, and you are truly only as successful as the flour you help turn into steamed buns, who in your life have you been treating purely transactionally?
That is the real question to sit with.
And what would happen to your own peace of mind if you stopped being a lurker in your own relationships, your own workplace, your own community, and started practicing a little bit of formless almsgiving today?
Thank you so much for exploring this with us.
We loved diving into this with you. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.